Started? Okay. Can everybody hear me all right?
Yes.
All right. So, has anyone not seen me talk today? It just was. I can go ahead and give background, but I didn't want to bore you. So, just really quick. My name is Sina Bahram. We're going to talk. Yes. Whatever.
Take two.
Take two. So really quick, my name is Sina Bahram. We're going to be talking about web accessibility today. Most of this is going to be hands-on, meaning that you're going to be hearing what I'm hearing very shortly here. We're going to switch over to room audio and you're going to see a user interacting with the website, one inaccessible version and one accessible version. They're going to look the same, but they're going to behave very differently. Before we do that, a couple of ground rules. Please ask a lot of questions. This is a pretty interactive talk, so please stop me in the middle, ask me a lot of questions. No raising hands, no nodding. So please, just chime in as we go over the various concepts. So what are we going to talk about? We're going to go over a couple of terms, just to make sure everybody's on the same page regarding web technologies. Go over the demo. That's going to be a majority of what we're going to be doing today, and then wrap up with a call to action. So when I say assistive technology, basically I'm referring to things like a screen reader, I'm referring to things like a cane, for example, a braille display, if anyone has seen that. These are all different forms of technology that allow a user to interface with other technology or the real world to make up for some functional limitation, whether they're blind, whether they're deaf or hard of hearing, have a motor impairment, so on and so forth. So this is a series of technologies that can help the user do that. That's why they're called assistive technologies. I want to go over the difference between accessibility, usability, and universal design. I think we've talked a lot about universal design earlier today. The difference between accessibility and usability, really I break this down as accessibility is reach. Can the user get to that thing, whatever that thing may be? Can they access it? And then usability is how well can they use that thing? So if we're talking about a button, if they have to hit tab 20 times to get there, it might be accessible, but it is definitely not all that usable. Sometimes I will mess up and use the word accessibility and usability interchangeably. It's something that we do a lot in this field, but please forgive me if I do, because those are the proper definitions. So we have a couple of distinctions here. When I say Web 1.0, I'm referring to things like the static web. This is a lot from the 90s, edit boxes, a couple of buttons maybe, some images, some paragraphs, that sort of thing. Nothing terribly flashy. Now when I say Web 2.0, who's heard that term before?
I have.
Okay. And so that's more of your round corners, your Ajax, which is JavaScript that brings the page to life. You don't have to refresh for everything. This is going to be more your Facebook, your Twitter, that sort of thing. So it's a very interactive, rich experience. Who's heard of Web 3.0? Aha. So Web 3.0 is sometimes referred to as the semantic web. This is the idea that we have a lot of knowledge on the internet. We have a lot of content out there. But if you've ever Googled for something and it is the same as something else, for example, Jaguar, are you talking about the car? Are you talking about the animal? Are you talking about the brand itself? It's sometimes not very clear. So what the semantic web is all about is a way of defining these terms with a common ontology or a common dictionary of terms, so that when you go on a Wikipedia article and they talk about Jaguar, the computer immediately knows. It's kind of like a link, for example. That instance of the word Jaguar, it's directly related to this definition over here. You don't have to be confused about it. So this is the idea of Web 3.0. Folks like Tim Berners-Lee, the guy who invented the World Wide Web, and others are really big proponents of this, as am I. It's a really neat way of trying to get this sort of semantic markup and these definitions out there. I've seen some cool projects in this space that I'd be happy to talk to you about, and in the library context, I think it's really important because as you're digitizing and as you're putting content online, also as you're dealing with your own just digital content, it's really important to use semantic data whenever possible. Ajax, I mentioned earlier, it stands for asynchronous JavaScript and XML. It's just the technology layer we use to allow web pages to interact back with the server without having to reload the whole page. If you want to get more into the technicals, I'll be happy to. Now, why ARIA? So ARIA stands for Accessible Rich Internet Applications. It's a set of standards that allows web developers to mark up their websites, to give roles to things like this is a button, even though I'm not using the button tag, so that a screen reader and so that any other assistive technology can know how to interact with that thing. So if you want to use an image of a checkbox instead of an actual checkbox, using things like ARIA, you can mark that up appropriately so it behaves the right way for somebody using the screen reader. Let me ask you a couple of questions here in terms of experience. So who here is a web developer? Like you would say that you would call yourself a web developer.
I am.
Okay. Who here makes web pages but are not a web developer? You make them in WordPress, Drupal, that sort of thing, but you're not a web dev.
I mean.
All right, a lot more of that. And then who here does not at all make web pages at all, just not part of the job?
Me.
All right. So you guys, if you have questions, please don't be shy about jumping in and asking. Don't feel like you're going to be holding us up or anything. So I want you to get these concepts, and it's really overall usability. So if you have any even general questions, just let me know. Feel free to jump in. For the rest of you, web devs and also content creators in content management systems, know that I'll be talking about some higher level concepts. If you ever want me to drill down into any code or anything, just say the word and we can do that. Flash, Silverlight, these sorts of things. It's good to see this becoming less and less prevalent on the internet, to be honest with you. These are more binary interfaces, to allow you to make the web a more rich place. You've seen little Flash websites that have games on them, or the entire website is written in Flash. This is really a very bad idea, especially in today's world. You have HTML5, you have such rich tool sets out there. There's really no good reason to use Flash anymore. So I would say, try to avoid them whenever possible. As far as using toolkits and frameworks, it's a great idea whenever possible. So whenever you can take advantage of other people's work, you should do so. But more so than that, sometimes these frameworks have accessibility and other things like mobile or responsive design. They have that stuff built in, so you don't have to worry about writing it. And that's really important. So whenever possible, try to use a framework. Don't try to roll it yourself. Don't try to code it yourself. It's just a really good idea to keep it as standard as possible. All right, so let's go over the web demo, which is going to be the context of most of this. I'm going to just fire up a browser. All right. I'm going to have that loading there, and then I'm going to take these off. And so for the rest of this, you're going to basically be hearing what I was hearing. Okay, here we go. Turn the volume up a little. Now, so that's a little fast. Oh, actually, it was really slow, but anyway. 33%, 30%. How are you guys there? Is that perfectly understandable, or you want it slower?
Voice fluctuation, combo box, sub, 2 or 4, the James resume.
That's perfectly understandable.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
JAWS. Alt-Tab, title, notepad,
Okay, here's a simple notepad. If you were in the WordPress sessions, I think you've seen this, so just let me know if you need me to move on. But basically, it reads text, right? You can do word navigation. You can tell that difference in pitch. That's how it can tell capitalization to the user, right? So you don't have to use words. Yes.
We lost the screen, so we're just hearing, we're not seeing.
Well, that's
not
anything I did, but stand by. Correct? Want me to resend? Please stand by as we look into this situation. Nothing?
No, I don't.
Windows D, projection options, list box extend, 3 of 4, projector only. Enter, untitled.
There, I resent.
Yeah.
We good?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, thanks for letting me know. So it lets you know the difference between capitalization. It's just important because, for example, it could have said capital T, but that would have been a lot of syllables to waste on something that happens a lot. So keep that in mind even when writing content, that there are certain concerns when you do that, when you write a description for an image, which we'll be talking about. It's good to sort of keep your audience in mind and sort of think about, look, if I'm going to make them listen to all this. What's the thing that makes the most sense?
Page, blank. Blank, escape,
If
leaving,
we
blank,
go
menu,
here-
multi, cut, control plus X unavailable, T.
Again, it says cut, it says control plus X, it gives me the mnemonic. Same stuff will happen on the web, which we're about to go to in a second. And another thing that it does is it says unavailable, it doesn't say grayed out. Again, what's semantically relevant, not what's relevant from a visual perspective.
Alt F4, Note Edit, JAWS.
So,
Alt Tab, accessibility,
okay, do you see that webpage?
Yes.
All right. So this is a website taken from an academic context. You'll see a lot of this sort of thing at universities. I'm going to run through this, going through the various controls, pointing out various things. Then we're going to see pretty much the exact same thing, but it's going to read a little bit differently. So let's begin.
Link graphic test demo slash B0001.
So it says link graphic test demo slash B001. So test demo is the word test demo all written out as one word, right? And then B001, it's just the name of, it's some file name, right? So not very helpful at all. I know there's a graphic. It's even a link, which is even more important because I wonder where it goes and so on and so forth. But I have no clue what it is, right? And the reason I have no clue what it is because that graphic, that image, doesn't have an alt text on it, okay? And because it doesn't, I have no way of, knowing what that is. Does that make sense?
Vertical bar.
So vertical bar, okay, that's kind of odd. Why are they using that for layout? That's just some character. It's not meant to be used for layout, but whatever.
Link syllabus.
Okay, so link syllabus, that's
Vertical
cool.
bar, link notes.
Notes, okay, let me just let him read for a little bit.
Link notes, vertical bar, link assignment, 1 vertical bar, link assignment, 2 vertical bar, link assignment, 3 vertical bar, link assignment, 4 vertical bar, link activities, vertical bar, link questions, vertical bar, link calendar, vertical bar, link click here for the better demo page.
Okay, so lots of things there. Pretty boring, actually, just a list of links, right? That's nothing, by the way. That was only, 6, 7 links, something like that. There are some websites with 200, 300, 400 links. Academic portals, I think one of them that I was on had 2,500 plus links on it. And so if you don't structure your web page correctly, that's what you're forcing your user to listen to. That's what you're forcing your user to interact with. And so it's really important to do some things that we're going to talk about on the next page, like put these links in a list, offer headings, use landmarks, those sorts of things, so that the user doesn't have to just go through these one after another, right? Does that make sense? All right.
Link.
So
Why is this
we heard
link.
one other thing.
Talking about link, this is a demonstration, link, accessibility, link for the better.
I'm just arrowing up.
Link, vertical link, click here.
It said link, click here, right? Well, okay, for what? And so that's just completely not useful. So if I tab, right, if I shift tab here,
Shift tab, new tab page, tab, click here, link.
click here, link, that's it. Just tab, click here, link. So it's completely not semantically relevant. Whereas the text for it is right below,
For the better demo page.
or beside, for the better demo page. And so that's where you want to name your links correctly, okay? First of all, the terms click here, just get it out of your vocabulary. It's a bad idea for a lot of reasons, not only just for screen reader users, because you've got people on touch devices, they're going to be tapping, you've got folks who are going to be actuating the computer with different technologies. So click here, just not a good idea. Let's not use that. But then also, it says for the better demo page. That should have been part of the link, right? So one of the things I think we'll see on the next page, for example, is you might, if you want to say click here, if you really want to use that sort of directive language, you could say for the better demo page, comma, click here, something like that. But it's always good to have these be sort of semantic. What does the link actually mean? And oftentimes there won't be only one of those, by the way, on the page. There'll be 20 or 30 of those on the page, and all it'll say is click here, click here, click here, and you have no clue what the difference between one link and another link is. Okay.
Accessibility demo.
Okay, so it says accessibility demo.
Link. This is a demonstration of a poorly designed web page.
Okay, so I'm going to let him read. I want you to take a listen and let me know if you notice anything odd or weird or whatever.
Talking about trigonometry, why is this course important? Let's look at the history of trigonometric tables were created over 2,000 years ago for computations in astronomy. The kind of trigonometry needed to understand positions on the sphere is called spherical trigonometry. The stars were thought to be fixed on the crystal sphere of great size, and that model was perfect for practical purposes. Spherical trigonometry is rarely taught now since its job has been taken over by linear algebra or plans.
So did you notice anything?
It's read from left to right.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay, so it's doing what it's supposed to be doing, right? I mean, if you think about it, this was laid out with a table, and the screen reader has been told that a table is read one row at a time, left to right, and then next row, left to right? So from a logical point of view, that's perfectly acceptable. However, this is laid out only for a visual purpose, right? It's only laid out this way to make it look right, but that's actually not the way you should lay things out. There's technologies like CSS, cascading style sheets, that let you lay things out if you want a two-column format. You should never ever use tables to lay things out. Tables are just used for exactly what the name says, tabular data, not for laying out text, not for laying out anything. So does that make some sense?
Yeah.
And this is one of the downsides that happens when you get that going on. Let's keep going.
Blank, table, values and special angles.
Now, here's another table. This one actually says values at special angles. It makes me think, wait, there is actually some graphical data.
Blank.
Let me just make sure we didn't skip anything.
Blank, only the blank, table with 7 columns and 6 rows.
Okay, table with 7 columns and 6 rows. What do we got?
X, sin X, cos X, tan X.
Okay, so we got some stuff there, tan X, wonder what that is, right? I mean, I have a little bit of sense of what's going on. Maybe it's tangent and sine and cosine and all that math stuff. But there's ways of labeling this stuff so that it's a little bit more clear. And I'll show you that on the next page. Now, let's keep going.
Cot X, sec X, CSCX, 0, 0, 1.
Okay, now, we don't have to navigate a table this way. I do actually have table reading commands. So let's use some of those. So I can move left 1 column.
0, column 2.
Okay.
SQRT 3/2, row 3.
Okay, that's great. But now, like, I have no clue what that's the value of. Is that the what of what? So I have to go all the way to the left.
2/ beginning of row, 2/3.
Okay, that's 2/3. And then what is that, the 2/3? What of 2/3? I have to go all the way up.
0, sin X, row 1.
Okay, sine of 2/3 is...
Sin SQRT 3/.
Okay, and that was only because I was at the top. If I was in the middle of the table...
S1, S blank, row 6.
Okay, that just says blank, which is super not helpful, right? And then I have to go all the way to the left.
0, 2, column beginning of row 2.
Okay, and then I have to go back and right to
0,
find it.
0, blank, column
Okay,
5.
now I gotta go all the way back up.
SQ -1, -2, blank, row, cot X, row 1.
Okay, so the cotangent of, I've already forgot what it was, is blank. Okay, so that's completely not helpful. There are very simple ways of making these headers actual headers. Right now, all the person did was, they made a table, which is fine, this is tabular data, you can do that. But they just made the first row the labels, as opposed to actually semantically marking it up, as opposed to saying, these right here, these are labels, these are headings up here. And so this is the name of this column, this is the name of this row. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna skip this.
Table head.
Okay, so at the bottom of the table, let's keep going.
Blank, questions.
Okay, questions, all right.
Blank, table with 6 columns and 3 rows.
Okay, well, another table.
Q1.
And this is just used to lay out text. Let's just keep going, I suppose.
Radio button object. A.
Well, I don't really know what the question is, but yeah, sure, whatever.
Radio B. Radio but C.
I mean,
Radio button
the
object.
answer's always C. Let's just...
Space.
there
C.
we go.
Radio button. Virtual
All right, let's just keep going.
C. Radio D. Radio
What are
button
the questions
object.
after it?
E. Q2.
No, that's question 2. Oh, okay.
Radio A. Radio B. Radio C. Radio
Keep
D.
going, I suppose.
Radio button E. Q3. Radio A. Radio B. Radio C. Radio D. Radio E. Table head blank.
Okay.
Table with 6 columns and 4
There's
rows.
another table.
Note questions in red are optional.
You jerk. So that's not good, right? We still haven't found the question yet. We'll get there in a second. But this is the idea of, look, why are we using color alone as a mechanism of conveying information? You can put questions in red that you want to be optional. That's totally fine. Or when you have an error page, for example, feel free to put on there, the things highlighted in red are required or whatnot. But at the same time, this needs to be presented in other ways as well. So for example, in HTML5, you can mark them as required. You can put an asterisk beside it so that it actually says star, for example. And there's other forms of things you can do so that verbally that's distinguishable as well. So you can use color, just don't make it your only way of conveying information, right?
A. B. A.
So-
Note questions in red are optional.
We have that, and then we have the letters of the alphabet in order, which is great.
A. B. C. D. E.
Awesome.
Blank. Question number 1.
Okay, well, maybe this is promising.
Blank. I will just table the order if the figure was lit so that Q was on right of the top of the circle.
Wait, what figure? Anyway.
The length of the hypotenuse will change.
Okay.
The altitude QR will
And
change.
this doesn't have any letters associated with it. I guess the third one, C.
The center row of the circle will move.
Sure.
The sign of the cosine will change.
Yeah, whatever. All right, so let's say we found the answer. Let's go all the way back up.
The set the altitude length I would blank. Question blank E. D. C. B. A. Note table blank table E. Radio D. Radio C. Radio B. Radio A. Radio Q3 E. Radio D. Radio C. Radio B. Radio A. Radio Q2 E. Radio D.
Change it to D.
Radio button object. Space. D. Radio button.
Now,
object.
if I was mean,
Virtual.
I'd make you listen to me going all the way back down, and going all the way back up, and going all the way back down. And to understand this is to understand how I did calculus 1, 2, 3, differential equations, some physics courses, a couple of chemistry classes, so on and so forth. This is basically the homework system that they had. And so even though the answer I might know in about 5 seconds, the doing of that answer might take 5 minutes per, right? Somebody else can fly through in about, let's say, a couple of minutes if they know what they're doing, maybe 30 if they have to look some stuff up. For me, it might take hours. Can we turn the mic down just a little bit? That's an issue, right? That's a significant issue. And the way that the things you will have to do to change that not to be the case, to basically fix this problem, will take minutes of your time, maybe seconds actually in certain situations. Yet it can have hours of frustration or result in hours of frustration for the user. So this is really important. The idea that there were tables being used to lay out, the text wasn't associated with where the questions were, all of those kinds of things. There was no headings, which we'll talk about on the next screen. Those are the sorts of issues that are extremely important, but these are what it implies, okay? The other thing on this page basically is the 3 questions. Note, by the way, I don't know which one's optional because it's just in red, so that's not helpful, right? And then, of course, we have a reset button, and a submit button at the bottom. So I'm gonna pause here because I want to get some thoughts from you and any questions. Obviously, we're going to go through all of this again, but seeing how it sounds correctly. But do you have any questions on this stuff or any thoughts on this?
Just a comment. I realized that my own website and or webpage and the website that my district uses, when we first got the program, they were advocating, because it would be easier because it's not that user-friendly, to actually make tables and put information in tables to set up the page design.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's just kind of interesting to,
Yeah. So that's
be aware
yeah.
what the background
No, I mean, it's
creates.
that is a really bad it's a really bad idea for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
It's bad for phones, it's bad for screen reader users. It's not semantically correct, right? I mean, it's right there in the name. It's called a table. It's for tabular data. It is not for laying things out. So those kinds of suggestions are extremely not a good idea, because what you're going to end up doing is creating a lot of basically hard-coded layouts, and then something changes, and you're going to have to go recode everything. And honestly, it's so much harder to do. Using tables to lay things out is actually not as easy. I mean, conceptually, it's somewhat easy, so it's easy to explain to people, oh, it's a grid, and then you can put another grid inside of that grid. Okay, that's great. But actually, when you look at it from a coding perspective, it's horrible, it's horrendous. And so it's a really bad idea, but hopefully they've changed that, or you have a mechanism when you upgrade, you guys can hopefully get it more accessible.
Right, exactly. Well, I mean, it's great information for me to bring back,
Sure.
because I don't know how many people are aware of this.
Sure. So there's some great standards. One of them is WCAG 2. This is the Web Consortium Accessibility Guidelines. I'll pop that up on the screen when we. Here, I'll pop it up in a different tab, and then we can revisit when we go to the new thing. But you can glance at it as I'm talking.
Control T, new tab, Alt D, O, WCAG, enter, list, page after, web content accessibility guidelines.
Okay, so these are the standards when I say best practices, when I say something's accessible online. These are those standards, right? There's 3 levels, A, AA, and AAA. Most folks target AA. Okay, AAA is a little bit specific. There's some controversial stuff in there in terms of some things that it disagrees with AA, but for the most part, if you're AA compliant here, you're on the right path. That does not mean that everything's going to be hunky-dory and everything's accessible, all that stuff, but what it means is these are some fantastic standards. There's some great, this is a somewhat long document, there's some great working guides off of this, and those are linked off my webpage. I'll show you a link to that as well. And so don't feel like, oh, I have to read this long spec, and then like, what does it mean, guideline 3.2.3. No. It's useful to have that, and it's useful to refer to that, but there's also some great, here's how you actually make an image accessible according to this, or here's the user story for how to make an accessible form. And so there's some great resources out there for that as well.
Great.
So if you're making content, I highly recommend this. This is, and by the way, this is actually codified into law. When they did the 508 refresh, this is what the regulations actually refer to now. So when the law says something is accessible, they actually mean WCAG 2.0 compliant. Any other questions on the, what were we calling this? The bad demo page before we go on to the better demo page, or any comments? Okay. Feel free to jump in. So,
forward, new tab.
Okay.
Land reset button. Screen updated. Accessibility test blank link for vertical bar. Link is not vertical link at vertical link for link at vertical link for blank accessibility blank for the better link clicking enter clicking click.
All right.
Accessibility test accessibility test.
Let me slow him down.
Slower. Access the same navigate.
You guys are good there?
Same page link skip.
Is that good?
Yes.
Yes.
Accessibility better test demo.
Okay, he reads the title, then he says,
Same page link skip to main content.
so this is an invisible link. It says same page link, skip to main content. Same page link, just like, remember he was saying link before. That simply lets me know, hey, what's in front of you right here is a link. But the other thing that's important about there is that he said same page link. So that's the idea that if you click on this, it's not going to take you away from this page. It's actually going to link you to an anchor somewhere down below, all right, or above. And that's pretty useful because it lets you do things like skip the user to where you would maybe want them to go. I'm not going to hit it now because I want you to see the stuff after it. But if I were to hit enter on that link, on that skip to main content link, I would jump to the main content of the web page. And I'll show you. Are there any developers like in the room that want to know how to code that really simply? I can show you. It's pretty straightforward. Any interest in that, or should I move on? Okay, you got it. So basically, the next thing we have is
Navigation region.
okay. It's a navigation region. So folks have heard of HTML5? Anybody?
Yes.
Okay, so for those of you who haven't, HTML5 is basically a specification that is the kind of the refresh of HTML, introduce some new tags, some new methodologies for doing things, and one of the things is landmarks or regions. So navigation is a way of semantically marking up your page that says this stuff over here, this is navigation stuff. That stuff over there, that's an article. That stuff over there, that's the footer. And so if you put these tags around, then you allow the user to skip between them, right? And so I can go
Main region. Rapid to bottom. Main region.
See?
Rapid to bottom. Main region.
and so I can like jump to the main region, I can jump to the navigation region, so on and so forth. And so it's a way of basically semantically marking up your page. So not only Google knows, oh, these are the nav links, I can follow these and do other things with them like display it to the user, but it lets a screen reader user quickly jump to the navigation menu.
Heading level 2 navigation.
Okay, then we got a little a hidden heading there that says navigation as well. This is for screen readers or for older content, for older browsers that don't support landmarks. And the other advantage is that it's a heading, so I can jump between headings. So, for example,
Accessibility demo heading. Why is this course important? Questions heading. Question number 1. Question number 2. Start question number 3.
you see, so I can jump between those different headings, and so it lets me jump. It lets me, it's still linear, it's still not perfect, but at least now I can jump around a little bit more. I can jump up to the top and
Navigation heading.
quickly get back to where I was, right? All with a few keystrokes, as opposed to having to down arrow, past all those links or whatever. The other thing to take note is heading level. So there are 6 levels of heading, H1 through H6, that's the name of the tags. And oftentimes the level 1 heading is the title of the page. Or the title of the article, for example, might be the title of the page, that sort of thing. And your level 2 headings then are below that. Level 3 headings are nested in between those. So it's like an outline view, right? If you've ever done like an outline for a book or an outline for a document. That's what these are. By the way, this isn't tied to the web. This isn't specific to the web at all. There are headings in Microsoft Word. So please don't, when you're titling a paragraph or titling a chapter or anything, or a section, don't just highlight it, dial it up to 14 or 16 point font, make it bold, maybe underline it, whatever. Instead, use the built-in styles in Word. And that's really crucial, actually, if you ever print it to PDF. Because if you save from Word to PDF, which is the way you should do it, don't just print to PDF, but save as PDF in Word, which it can do now, you get an accessible PDF as a result, or at least a more accessible PDF. We back on?
Yep.
But does that make sense in terms of what headings are for? They're not just for making text bigger, right? All right.
List of 11 items. Link graphic NC State logo.
So it said list of 11 items, it said link graphic, NC State logo, and so now what we've got basically is, I know exactly what that is, it's the logo for NC State, it's probably going to take me there, fantastic, right? Notice it did not visually describe that image, it actually told me what it was instead, and that's really important because while it might be nice to know like what's in the graphic, that's more eye candy, what I really care about is what it is and what it might, what it might do for me, right? We can go on.
Link syllabus.
Right.
Link notes.
And we can navigate this very easily because it's in a list.
Link assignment for link notes.
We can go backwards like that. We can skip the whole thing now. We don't have to just down arrow, because if we skip,
There are no
sorry, wrong key.
list end.
There we go. And we can just skip that whole thing. List end, and I'm at the bottom of it. I didn't have to arrow through all of those things. So by putting them in a list, an unordered list in this particular case, and by just wrapping them in that content, I can allow the user to quickly jump over that. This also has a lot of styling benefits, of course. With just one line of code, you can change all of those colors, you can change the bullet styles, you can do anything you want visually. So there's a lot of advantages of doing that.
Link back demo page.
And then, of course, right there, we have a link to the bad demo page, just the bottom of the list. No more click here, okay?
List end. Navigation region end.
Okay, then the navigation region ends, letting me know I'm at the, end of the navigation, right? And then,
Main region.
so now we begin the main region of the page, right? And what do we have in the main region?
Heading level 1 accessibility demo.
Awesome, so it's a level 1 heading because it's the title of the page, and let's let it read.
This is a demonstration of a web page using CSS talking about trigonometry. Heading level 3. Why is this course important? Let.
You notice there it had the heading level 3. Why is this course important? It's one of those subheadings, and again, it lets me jump to it directly.
Accessibility. Why is this questions? Why is this course important?
Right, like that, so that's really helpful.
Blank.
I can, by the way, show you guys those headings.
Jaws. Head.
So you see that? That's the layout of the headings on the page.
Quick.
See,
Stop.
right there. And I could jump to any of those if I wanted to in this mode as well.
Escape. New tab. Heading blank. Trigonometric tables were created over 2,000 years ago for computations in astronomy. The stars were thought to be fixed on the crystal sphere of great size, and that model was perfect for practical purposes.
And so on and so forth, but it's reading it correctly. It's laid out with CSS. It's no longer read with a table, so that's why you don't want to use tables to lay things out. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes.
Blank. Only the blank. The kind of blank. Spherical to blank. Nonetheless, one that blank graphic circle with a perpendicular triangle showing the sine and cosine of the right angle.
Okay, so we have a couple of things going on here. It said circle with a perpendicular triangle, right? It gave me that visual description. That's the alt text on this graphic to help me answer the question, right? It also has something below it.
Definition of trigonometric functions. Draw a unit circle with center O. Let a central angle with initial side OP and terminal side OQ contain x radians. That is, the arc PQ has length x. Drop a perpendicular from Q to OP meeting it at R. Then OR equals cos x and RQ equals sin x. If those directed line segments are up or to the right, the lengths are positive. If they are down or to the left, the lengths are negative.
So that's a little bit more of a detailed description, right? And the reason I had a math demo here was because oftentimes the short description is sufficient for some stuff, but the longer description is a lot more appropriate for other things. And this comes up in other contexts as well. You might want a short one just to let somebody know what a particular digitized piece of content is, but the longer description is actually what's interesting if they express interest in that, right? This is using the HTML5 figure tag. So basically the idea here is you can still put alt text on the image. That'll be the thing that a screen reader user or a non-graphical user is going to hear. But then you also have the caption of that image. And so the caption is can offer a great deal more information and let the person know what's going on with that image. This is obviously a lot more helpful than just graphic or just a file name.
Summary. Values showing trig functions at different values of x.
So this table has a summary, that was it right there, that we just heard, and so it gives you a little bit of context of what's this table about. I'm about to encounter this table, but what is it about?
Blank. Table with 7 columns and 6 rows.
Okay, again it told me table, it told me how many rows and columns there are. Let's see if this reads any differently.
X, sin x, cos x.
Okay. And that's actually a bug, which I'm not going to fix right now, but that should have said cosine of x. I will show you.
0, 1, row 2, tan x, 0.
You'll see now that when I move by column and when I move by row,
Cos x, 1, column 3.
It says 1, right? And if I go down,
2/3, -1/2, row tan x, sqrt 3/3.
it's reading the column. So every time I switch columns, it's reading the new column. Anytime I switch rows, it's reading the new row.
3/4, -1, row.
You see? So, and I know what column I'm in. If I don't, I can just go to the right and go to the left again.
Cot tan x, -1, column.
So I immediately know that I'm in that tangent column. There's one bug here I had turned off for another demo, the abbreviation expansion, but this would have actually said, and that's my fault, I'm sorry, but it would have said tangent of x, and the reason it would have said that is I just used the ABBR tag, and so that lets you put an abbreviation on something, and so whenever the screen reader encounters it, it'll actually expand that abbreviation. It'll say tangent. That's not only helpful for screen reader users, it's actually helpful a lot for English as a second language, because you can put the translation right there. or you can expand it out for maybe lower literacy in terms of somebody who might have a word whose definition they might not be so familiar with, and you can actually put a longer description of that word or a description of that definition right there in the abbreviation tag. Does that make some sense?
Yes.
All right. A lot fewer yeses, but that's okay. It's 4:30. We're ready to go to bed. I get it. All right.
Space. SQ minus 1. Table end.
Okay. So I'm going to jump to the end of that table.
Blank. Heading level 3 questions.
Okay. So now we've got 2 questions.
Note the questions denoted with a red star are optional.
Okay. Questions denoted with a red star. Again, it's red. That's fine. We're using color, but it's also an asterisk or a star, so it lets me know immediately which one is going to be optional.
Blank. Heading level 4 question number 1.
Okay. We've descended down into the 4th level of headings, right? And we're on question number 1. What does it say?
Blank. I will disable the alter if the figure was lit so that Q was on right of the top of the circle.
Okay, same question as before, but now we can read the table a lot better. We know what the graphic is, right? We can go through the answers immediately right here.
A. The length of the hypotenuse will J. B. The altitude. C. The center. D. The sign of the
Right,
cosine.
very simply, right? It's excessively marked up. I can select D or whatever.
Space. D. The sign of virtual.
I can jump to the next question.
Question number 2 heading level 4.
Okay.
Blank. In the table the sin never has a negative sign. Why not?
Okay, I can quickly jump.
A. C. D. Because the net E. None of the above. Space. E. None of
All right, I can jump to the next question.
Star question number 3 heading.
It said star, so I know it's optional. I don't feel like answering it. Fine.
Blank. X labels
Read it.
include an angle in the figure of the table.
Okay, like that. If I read this one and I say, oh, I kind of messed up, I can go back
Now
up.
we can wrap the top. Question number 2.
There's question number 2. I can jump up to the table very simply.
Table with 7 columns and 6 0, 0, 2, 3, 10, X.
Check something and then jump back down to the question.
Question number 1. Question star question.
And all because a few lines of code were written to make those things headings and to make that table read well, right? So that's some ideas there in terms of markup and in terms of content, how just doing a few things makes a really big difference. So are there any questions on that?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Well, one thing, was I correct in hearing that question 1, it said cap Q?
Excessive navigation heading level. What questions heading level 3? Question blank. I will disable the alter if the figure was lit so that Q was on right of the top of his.
So I was wrong here. At the top of the page, I don't think I heard anything about there being a jump to content link. Is that a practice that's deprecated by HTML5 or?
Well, so you mean you didn't hear it in that, you didn't hear me go over it, or you didn't hear it?
Well, I meant to circumvent the navigation menu.
Right. So we have
Save page link skip to main content.
right there.
Okay, so there is that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's just CSS off to the side. But the reason that it's there is to allow somebody to immediately jump to the main content. Yes, we have headings. Yes, we have navigation regions. Sometimes you'll have switch users, for example. So a switch user, like, I mean, you guys know who Stephen Hawking is, for example? So he actuates a computer interface by basically doing with his jaw, right? And I mean, he's got to have the most atrophied jaw of anybody on the planet. But it's the only way he can interact with a computer. As a result, the cursor scans. When that cursor lands on, because for him, you know, it would when it highlights focus on skip to main content, he could actuate that and then scroll down the page a little bit, as opposed to having to wait to parse through all of that. And so it's still helpful to have that there. I wouldn't say HTML5 really deprecates that practice at all, but it's something that's a lot less needed or required because things like headings and navigation regions and landmarks exist. But I like to still put them on because I think that there's an audience out there that can really benefit from it. Does that answer your question?
Yes, when you first pulled up the page and started through it, I hadn't heard, I did not hear that link.
Oh, sorry, I didn't emphasize it enough. I'm sorry. Yeah. So there is a link there. It is a graphic. Okay. It says skip to main content. Well, here I'll play it again.
Like the same page link skip to main content.
Right. It's an invisible link there. It says skip to main content, and that content that link will take you to the beginning of the content. It's the same page anchor. Yeah, of course. Any other questions on this?
Sina, I have a question about the table. There was a question on there that says if the figure were flipped so the Q is on the right of the circle, is there a way that you can extract a chart and flip it so that you don't have to memorize it and try to think of it backwards? Like,
Well, I mean, so that's a complicated question. Let me break it down in a few ways. The first is there a way that you can extract a chart and flip it? right? I mean, like, you would have to do some stuff too, right? Like,
Yes.
you would have to maybe save that off, open it up in Paint, flip
Right.
it around. Kind of not the point of doing it if you're taking this class, right? Like, they really want you to build
Right.
up some visual memory and things like that. So that's my sort of immediate answer.
Okay.
Now, but there's another, I guess, point to it, which is, well, two other points I'd like to make. One is, so you don't have to memorize it. I think that's a fantastic point. You can jump it back to it, so you don't have to memorize it, but you do have to refer back to it. And I think your point's a really good one in that if visually you have that in front of you, it's a lot easier to refer back to, right?
Right.
That's why this navigation stuff is so important, so that at least it doesn't take me 18 seconds to go back up there. It takes me 1, so that I can at least flip back and forth so simply and concentrate on going back and forth. But if you're asking whether that's a harder problem to do if you're blind than if you're sighted, the answer is yes.
Yes.
But that's part of the whole, tough. So, that's there are going to be some challenges, right? Now, let me give you a little bit more of a theoretical answer. If you're really interested in doing some things, for example, let's say the website had a button to flip that image for the sighted user. Okay, so now no longer it's kind of like not really an academic homeworky kind of thing. It's more of a simulation or a Wikipedia article with a cool animation, that sort of thing. Now, what we could do is we could dynamically change that description, right? So the same code that's going to be flipping that image could load in another description that's more appropriate once the image is flipped, okay?
Right.
Other things you can start looking at is accessible versions of infographics, which I can talk to you offline a little bit, but basically it involves you can use touch screens and tablets to make that image a lot more interactive, or you can give it to the user in Braille. Let's say if we were in a student context, you would provide it to the student in an embossed form or in Braille, and then they could, of course, turn the sheet of paper around.
Okay.
So there's lots of answers to that, but the simple one being, that's why navigation is so important. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. What else? Is this clear in terms of how you would do something like this, for example, like in a WordPress context, why headings matter or why like putting links in lists matter rather than just hitting enter on them?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Let me bring this up for a
Web
minute.
content.
I would encourage you to look at this. There are some other resources that I'll bring up in 1 second, but I would really encourage you to look at the WCAG guidelines. I think a lot of people have put a lot of time into making these extremely useful, and a great deal of companies and frameworks are adopting them as the standard, and I think that's a really great thing. If you go to my page,
Alt-DS, enter, SinaBahram.com, Sina Bahram,
right here, and if SinaBahram.com, if you go to resources,
virtual, enter, bullet list and link, enter, resources with,
there's some stuff here. I'll be adding more. I usually do, but
and resources edit from policies and ready weapon document accessibility, edit level 3,
right.
list of 29 items.
So there's 29 things there. I'll add a few more, but there's some things there that might help getting started in terms of if you're interested in color, if you're interested in headings, if you're interested in content accessibility, whatever the case may be, this would be a place to launch off of some resources. Please feel free to, you can contact me for more, and as you Google, you'll find some other resources as well. I think most of you were in the WordPress thing, but I will point out there's the Wave toolbar that is pretty helpful in Firefox for letting you go through some of this, and hopefully having gone through this, you now will understand some of its output when it talks about no alt text or when it talks about incorrect heading order or things of that nature. This is some of those things that they're referring to. Okay. Any questions on that stuff before I move on? All right. So let me switch things here. Okay. Okay, so this is just a cute thing. I get some chuckles. So this is a shirt I actually helped design for a buddy of mine, Billy Gregory, who's an awesome guy who lives up in Canada, does some cool accessibility consulting, helping people make their websites accessible like I do. And so we made him this shirt. This one says, "I put the bill in accessibility," which is his little tagline. And so then we've got this one. This is the back. and the HTML tags say beard/beard because he's rather proud of his. And also, that shirt's in Braille. So I actually went in with my designer, and I had her put in the dots in a Photoshop layer, and then we sent it off to the printer and told them to put those dots where it was in the file. So the picture I'm not going to show you is of me feeling his shirt, just to make sure that it came out correctly. But I was really surprised; it really did. So both the front and the back were totally were totally in Braille. So that's our chuckle for the day. So, call to action, this might look familiar, but basically this is the same from the Universal Design Talk, because it turns out that I basically have the same call to action wherever I go. It's really important. Think of your audience, think of everybody that might be visiting your content, even if you haven't been before, because it's really important. And take a look at these things as opportunities, not just burdens or challenges. There are some tools to help you along the way. We've talked about the Wave toolbar. There's a couple of others on the resources page. Once you start doing this stuff, you'll notice these implicit advantages that come up. So for example, it turns out that pretty much everything you have to do to make a website good for phone or good for accessibility is good for mobile. And so that's a really big takeaway, that if you're interested in mobile, or if you're interested in making your website look good on an iPad or an iPhone, by making it accessible, you're 90% of the way, there on certain areas. So I think that's really powerful. And as far as embracing new technologies and spreading the word, I think that should be self-explanatory by now. I really encourage you to have conversations with colleagues, send them to my stuff, give them a copy of these slides, I'll put those up, so on and so forth, and I'll be happy to talk with them as well. And then with that, I'm going to put up contact stuff, let you guys out a little bit early, and thanks so much.